I've been a gay man my entire life, and then my new female roommate fell asleep on my shoulder, and I lost my entire mind. I have been gay my entire life. I dated a boy named Brandon for 2 years in high school. I came out to my family at 16, and my mother handled it by buying me a rainbow throw pillow. I had a gay best friend named Devin, a gay group chat, a gay therapist, and a gay rescue dog. That was the foundation of everything I thought I knew about myself. 6 months ago, I met my female roommate, Margot, through a mutual friend when I needed the second bedroom filled fast. She showed up in cargo pants and a hoodie with the name of a band I had never heard of. She had a small mole on her chin, wore no makeup, and shook my hand with both of hers. She told me she had a cat named Pasta who lived with her mother because our building did not allow pets. I told her she could have the room. At first, she was just a polite stranger. She paid rent early, watered the plants, left sticky notes when she finished the milk, and did the dishes before I could even rinse them. We barely spoke, and I told myself this was the best living situation I had ever had. Then she started becoming a person instead of a roommate. In the second month, she brought home a guitar and played a song she had written herself. On one line, she looked across the room at me and held my eyes for the whole chorus. I told myself it was nothing. She probably looked at everyone that way. In the third month, she got the flu, and I made her soup because that is what decent people do. She ate it wrapped in a blanket, set the bowl down, and squeezed my hand. She told me I was a good man. She held on a few seconds longer than a friend would. Something moved in my chest. The next morning, she walked out in pajama shorts and a t-shirt with her hair in every direction. She poured coffee from my pot, took one sip, and made this small, happy sound. I sat on the kitchen stool and thought, oh no. I texted Devin that I had a problem. He arrived 20 minutes later with mimosas anyway. When I told him I might be in love with my roommate, he laughed for a full minute and said this was the most heterosexual thing I'd ever done in my career as a gay man. Then he stopped laughing and asked, very seriously, what kind of love? I said I did not know. Maybe the kind where you make someone soup and also wonder what her hair smells like. The gay group chat was informed within the hour. 3 people said I had lost it. 2 sent articles. 1 sent a single heart and nothing else, which was somehow the most supportive thing anyone said all day. After that, living with Margot became unbearable in a new way. She left me coffee every morning, perfectly made, without asking how I took it. She cooked dinner on Wednesdays because her grandmother had a tradition she wanted to keep alive. She learned new songs and sang through her wall. She put her feet in my lap during movies and never moved them. Then one Friday, she fell asleep on the couch with her head on my shoulder, and I sat frozen for 40 minutes because I could not bring myself to wake her. I started avoiding her because every small thing she did made me lose my mind. I hid in my room with a face mask on. I stopped sitting at the kitchen counter. I rearranged my schedule. She noticed. One night, she knocked on my bedroom door and asked through the wood if she had upset me. I told her no. The next morning, there was a sandwich on the counter with a smiley face drawn on the napkin and a folded note that said, you can talk to me if you want. Devin staged an intervention the next day. He came over while Margot was at her mother's and told me I had 2 choices. I could keep hiding until she gave up on me, or I could tell her and live with whatever happened next. Either way, he said, I had to stop being a coward in my own apartment. So the next morning, while Margot was making tea in the kitchen, I stood in the doorway and told her I needed to say something. She turned around slowly. I told her everything in one shaky breath. I told her I was gay, and she knew that, and the whole world knew that, but I had been having feelings for her for months. I told her I did not want her to think she had done anything wrong. She had not. She was just being herself, and that was the problem. She looked at me for a long time. Then she walked across the kitchen and stopped about a foot in front of me. My heart was hammering so loudly I was sure she could hear it. She said, I know you're gay. You told me on move-in day. You told me when I asked about your ex. You told me when Devin came over with mimosas. I thought that was it. I thought she was about to say something kind and final and walk back to her room, but she didn't. She said, but you also made me soup, and you sat still for 40 minutes so I could sleep, and right now you are shaking. Then she put her hand flat against my chest, right over my heart. This does not feel like nothing. I opened my mouth, and absolutely nothing came out. She told me she had been feeling it too. She said she did not know what to do with it either, and that it had been messing with her head for weeks. She said, I have been leaving you coffee every morning hoping you would sit with me, and instead you started hiding in your room with a face mask on. Do you know how confusing that was? I laughed. I did not mean to. It just came out, and it broke the moment open. We ended up sitting at the kitchen table for 3 hours. Her tea went cold, and neither of us touched it. She told me she was not asking me to be straight. She was not asking me to be anything. She just wanted to know what this was, because she felt it too, and she was tired of pretending she didn't. I told her I did not have a word for it yet. She rested her chin on her palm and said, then we don't need one yet. That was the thing that made me feel like I could breathe again. Not an answer, not a label, not a plan, just permission to not know and still be honest. For 2 weeks, things were quietly wonderful. The apartment felt warmer. We cooked together in the evenings. She played guitar on the living room floor while I listened from the couch. One night during a movie, she reached over and took my hand without saying anything. I held it in the dark and did not try to name it. The strange part was how normal everything still looked from the outside. The plants still needed water. The trash still had to go out. The rent app still sent reminders. Margot still asked if I wanted onions in the sauce, and I still pretended I had strong opinions about onions because it made her smile. But underneath those ordinary things, I felt like I was carrying a secret that kept changing weight in my hands. Some days it felt light, almost funny, like I had accidentally discovered a hidden room in a house I already owned. Other days it felt enormous, like one wrong sentence would knock down every version of myself I had spent years building. Margot never pushed me to define it. That was what made it harder and easier at the same time. She did not ask me what we were every morning. She did not test me. She did not turn my confusion into proof that I cared less. If I reached for her hand, she held it. If I needed space, she gave it. If I spiraled out loud, she listened until I ran out of words, then asked if I wanted tea. She made the whole thing feel possible by refusing to make it feel like a trial. Then Caleb found out. It happened in the group chat. Someone joked that I had been weird lately because I was probably dating my roommate. The chat went silent for a full minute. Then Caleb typed, his female roommate? My phone buzzed 17 times in 2 minutes. Some people were confused. Some sent cautious questions. friends, but Caleb's messages were different. He called it a phase. He called it a crisis. He said I was confused. He said I was making a joke out of something people spent their lives fighting for. I read every message from the couch while Margot played guitar in her room, completely unaware that my social world was catching fire in a chat she had never seen. I called Devin first. He picked up and said, I saw the chat. Caleb is losing it. I asked if he thought I was making a mistake. Devin went quiet, then said, I think you are the most honest you have ever been. That is not a mistake. But Caleb is going to make it feel like one. The next day I met Nora at a coffee shop and told her everything. The soup, the guitar, the hand on my chest, the group chat, Caleb. She listened without interrupting, then said, you are allowed to be complicated. Anyone who tells you otherwise is protecting themselves, not you. Then her face changed. Caleb called me last night, she said. He is building a case. He is talking to people. He wants everyone to agree that you are confused. I sat in my car afterward, staring at the steering wheel, feeling 16 again, like someone else had the pen and I was just a character in their version of my life. That week, I saw Ronan, my therapist. I told him I felt like the walls were closing in and I did not know which way to move. He listened, then said, you keep framing this as a crisis. What if it is just an expansion? You did not stop being who you were. You found out there was more. I sat with that for a long time. An expansion, not a loss, not a betrayal, just more. When I got home, Margot was sitting on the couch with my phone in her hand. I had left it unlocked and the group chat was open. Her back was straight, her face calm, but her jaw was tight. She set the phone down carefully and said, is this what you have been dealing with? I nodded. Who is Caleb? I told her he was someone from my friend group, someone loud about protecting the community, someone who had decided she was a threat without ever meeting her. Margot looked at the phone, then back at me, and said, he does not get to decide what you are. That night, Caleb called. I almost ignored it, but I was done letting him control every conversation. His voice was cold and rehearsed. I am not going to watch you throw away everything you are for some girl in cargo pants. You owe this community more than that. Something in me settled. I said, I do not owe anyone a version of myself that is incomplete. He hung up. The next morning, Devin texted me that Caleb had moved into private conversations. He was reaching people one at a time, shaping the story before I could tell mine. That was when I realized I needed to talk to my mother before he got to her first. I drove to Ariadne's house that Saturday with a whole speech prepared. My mother had always been my safest person. When I came out at 16, she had not cried or panicked. She had bought me a ridiculous rainbow pillow and asked if Brandon was treating me well. But when she opened the door, I knew I was too late. Her face was careful. She led me to the kitchen table, poured tea from a pot that was already warm, and folded her hands. Your friend Caleb called me yesterday, she said. He told me you are going through something. He said you are confused. He said this girl is taking advantage of you. I tried to explain. I told her about Margot, how it started with soup and songs and small things that did not mean anything until they meant everything. I told her I was not confused. I told her I had never been more clear, and that was the part that scared me. I said, Mom, you handled me being gay by buying me a throw pillow. I need you to handle this the same way. I thought that would reach her. It didn't. She said, I am not upset that you have feelings for a woman. I am upset because you seem lost, and I do not know how to help you if you do not know what you are. That hurt more than anger would have, because I did not have a clean word for myself yet, but not knowing what to call something was not the same as being lost. I said, I do know what I am. I am someone who fell in love. You do not need a word for something to know it is there. You just need to feel it, and I feel it. She sat with that. Then she said carefully, Caleb told me she targeted you. I stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. Caleb has never met Margot. He does not know what he is talking about. My mother did not argue, but she did not agree either. She stayed in that awful middle space and said, I will always love you, but I need to understand this in my own way. I wanted to ask her what exactly she needed to understand. I wanted to ask why my certainty had been enough when I loved men, but suddenly needed footnotes when I loved Margot. But I could see the fear in her face, and that made me softer than I wanted to be. She was not trying to hurt me. She was trying to find the version of the map she already knew, and I had walked off the edge of it. That did not make it less painful. Love can still hurt when it is careful, maybe especially then. I left her house feeling like Caleb had turned the safest person in my life into a question mark. Devin called while I was still in the driveway. He told me Ariadne had called him too, asking if I was okay. Then he said, Caleb is coming to Etienne's gathering next weekend. So are you. This is going to be a problem. I knew he was right. When I told Margot, she squeezed my hand and asked, do you want me to come with you? I had not even considered it, but the second she asked, I knew the answer. I said yes. I called Etienne to warn him. I did not want to turn his house into a battlefield without giving him a choice. He listened, then said, my house, my rules, everyone is welcome, but if Caleb starts something, I am ending it. Then he added, there is one more thing. Ariadne called me. She asked if she could stop by. She wants to see you with Margot instead of hearing about you through Caleb's fear. I almost said, nah. Then I thought about my mother sitting at her kitchen table, loving me but not believing me yet. Maybe she needed to see the truth in a room Caleb could not control. So I said, okay. The night of the gathering, I spent too long deciding what to wear, as if a plain shirt and jeans could protect me from public judgment. Margot came out of her room in a simple shirt and jeans too, her hair tied back, no makeup, no jewelry. She looked exactly like herself, and somehow that made her look stronger than anyone I had ever seen. I told her, you do not have to do this. She said, you told the truth when it terrified you. The least I can do is stand next to you while people decide what to think about it. On the drive over, she asked what Caleb looked like. I described him. Sharp features, careful clothes, the posture of someone always about to make a point. Then she asked, if he comes at you, what do you want me to do? I said, nothing. I need to do this myself. She nodded, then said, okay, but I am not going to stand there and let someone tell you that loving me is a disease. We parked half a block from Etienne's house. The lights were on, music was playing inside, and shapes moved behind the windows. Margot put her hand over mine for 1 second before we got out. Before we went inside, Margot stopped me on the sidewalk. The porch light from Etienne's house cut across her face, and for a second I forgot the room full of people waiting behind the door. She touched my sleeve and said, no matter what happens in there, you do not have to perform certainty for them. You are allowed to still be figuring yourself out. That almost undid me, because I had been rehearsing certainty all week. I had been practicing practicing sentences that sounded clean and strong and unbreakable. Not because I felt unbreakable, but because I thought nobody would believe me unless I looked that way. Margot saw through it in one glance. I said, I am scared. She said, I know. Then she squeezed my hand and added, do it scared. Devin opened the door before we knocked. He looked at Margot, then at me, then grinned like he had decided something. All right, he said. She is real. This is happening. Let's go. Margot shook his hand with both of hers and said, you are the one who brought mimosas. Devin laughed and stepped aside. For 4 seconds, I thought maybe everything would be okay. Then I saw Caleb. He was standing near the far wall with a drink in his hand. His eyes landed on Margot first, and I watched surprise turn into something hard. He looked at her like he was comparing the real woman to the villain he had invented, and getting angry that they did not match. Tola was by the kitchen. She caught my eye and gave me a small nod. Etienne stood near the wall, calm and ready. A few people looked away when I looked at them. A few gave me small, nervous smiles. I realized then that Caleb had not turned everyone against me. He had just made them unsure, and unsure people often look cruel because they are too afraid to be kind out loud. That helped a little. Not enough to make the room easy, but enough to remind me that silence was not always hatred. Sometimes it was just people trying to decide whether they were brave enough to stand where they already knew they should. Caleb set his drink down and walked over. He stopped 3 feet in front of me and said, so this is real. You actually brought her. I said, her name is Margot. She is standing right here, so you can talk to her like a person, or you can walk away. Caleb turned to her. Do you know what you are doing to him? Margot did not flinch. She looked at him straight on and said, I made him soup once. He made me soup back. If that is destroying someone, I think you have a very different definition of love than I do. Caleb ignored her and turned back to me, louder this time. You had an identity. You had a community. People looked up to you, and you are throwing all of that away for what? A feeling? A straight crush? The room had gone quiet. I let the words land, and for the first time, they did not stick. I said, I am not throwing anything away. I am adding something. I did not stop being who I am. I just found out there is more of me than I thought. Caleb shook his head. That is not how this works. You are either one of us, or you are not. Before I could answer, Devin stepped beside me. Caleb, he said, I have known him longer than you have. I watched him come out. I watched him fall in love with a boy in high school. I watched him cry when that ended. And I am watching him now. He is not confused. He is just bigger than the box you want to put him in. Caleb stared at him. You are taking his side? Devin did not hesitate. There are no sides. There is just a man telling the truth and another man too scared to hear it. Nobody moved. That was when I really looked at Caleb. Not at the anger or the sharp voice, but underneath it. His eyes were wet. His jaw was tight. His fingers curled at his sides like he was trying to hold on to something that kept slipping away. I said quietly, Caleb, I am not leaving. I am not betraying you. My feelings for Margot do not make your identity less real. They do not make mine less real either. He opened his mouth like he had been saving one final sentence, but nothing came out. Then his voice cracked. I fought for 10 years to be allowed to be gay. 10 years of people telling me it was a choice. 10 years of my family saying I would grow out of it. 10 years of being told I was broken. He swallowed hard. And now you are standing here telling me you just woke up one morning and chose a woman and I'm supposed to be happy for you? And suddenly I understood. This was never really about Margot. It was about what my truth meant for his. If I could fall for a woman after a lifetime of being gay, then maybe every cruel person who told him it was a choice had been right. Maybe the walls he built to survive were not as solid as he needed them to be. I looked at him and said, I did not choose this. That is the whole point. I did not choose to be gay, and I did not choose to fall for Margot. It just happened. If anyone here should understand that something can be real even when it does not make sense to other people, it should be you. Caleb stared at me. The whole room held still. Then he turned and walked to the back porch. He opened the door, stepped outside, and pulled it shut behind him. The click of the latch sounded louder than the music. Nobody followed. Devin looked at me like he was proud, and Margot slid her hand into mine. I held on tight. Later, I would remember tiny details from that moment more clearly than the big ones. The condensation ring Caleb's drink left on Etienne's side table. The way Devin's shoulder brushed mine when he stepped closer. The way Margot's thumb moved once across my knuckle, so small nobody else could have seen it. The way my mother stood very still by the door, as if she knew she had arrived at the exact second when listening mattered more than speaking. Then I heard a quiet voice from the front doorway. I turned around. Ariadne was standing there with her coat still on and her purse over her shoulder. My mother looked smaller than she had at her kitchen table. Not weaker, just less certain. Like she had walked into that room carrying every question Caleb had planted in her and had watched them lose their shape one by one. Her eyes moved from me to Margot, then to our joined hands. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then my mother's careful expression broke open just enough for hope to get through. She stepped into the room and said quietly, introduce me to her. I looked at Margot. Her hand was still in mine, warm and steady. The room around us was full of people watching, thinking, processing. But none of that mattered anymore. For the first time in 6 months, the floor under me felt completely solid.